Hello and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Gugulethu Cele. Now, everybody has ambitions of purchasing their own property and providing a home for themselves and their family. But what about the cost implications that come about as to moving into a bigger home with more bedrooms and more space that one needs to fill up? The financial consequences of this can prove to be dire if you are unprepared. We're now joined by Eunice Sibiya, who is the Head of Consumer Education at FNB, to walk us through this tricky path as well as ensuring that consumers can prepare themselves financially for the big move. So good to have you with us as always, Eunice.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
So you've gotten your bond approved, you've found the property that's going to work for you and your family, but there's a certain cost implications that you're not aware of. I take it the obvious one will obviously be furniture for any consumer.
Yes, we seem to forget about those additional costs. I think, like you said, it's very exciting to have that bond approved. The exciting step is after the search, you now found a house that you think you like, you fall in love with this house. You know, house hunting is a very emotional exercise. So you've fallen in love with this beautiful house, you do your application and your bank says you're good to go. You know, it's very exciting. And you go home, you're celebrating. And you start now planning and, you know, doing the usual. But I think most of us think only of the repayment of the bond.
Yes.
That if you can afford that on a monthly basis, I am good to swim. However, there are humps even in the ocean while you're swimming that we normally forget about. And to your point, I think the first one to think of it will be additional furniture. Remember, we're talking about moving into a little bigger house, sometimes much bigger. So you'll have additional rooms, or you'll have much bigger rooms than you had before. And obviously they need to be filled up. And automatically, because of the excitement, we allow ourselves to be pressurized by the fact that, no, I cannot have an empty house. What are people going to say? Because you're going to invite people to come and see your house. When are you going to have a housewarming party? Maybe more than one. And you're like, no, people must walk into a fuller house. So automatically we put ourselves under pressure to fill up the house. And you haven't even accustomed yourself to the flow of the house, the feel of the house. So what kind of furniture are you going to need? Because you're moving in with your furniture. And some people say, no, I don't want old furniture in my house. I'm going to go brand new, room by room, you know, throughout. Have you planned for those expenses? That's all we're saying. We're not saying it's wrong to have new furniture. All we're saying is just be aware that you are ready for those costs, those additional costs. All right. So furniture is one. What kind of furniture are you going to buy? What kind of furniture can you afford? Can you afford furniture at that point in time? As you just move in, can you? Or can you just take a halt, woosa a little bit, and like, boy, now everybody will be okay. I'll furnish this house up as and when I can. Maybe room by room. Tackle it from the most important, you know, to the least. So don't allow yourself to be pressurized by wanting to have a full house as you just walk in, if you cannot afford it, if you haven't planned for it.
Something else we also tend to forget is that you get the bond approval, and like you say, you can manage the repayments there, but there's rates and taxes and levies that need to be paid. And the bigger the house, the bigger the consumption of all these services you're making use of, then the bigger the bill probably.
The bigger the bill. Have you factored those in? So that's point number 2. Electricity and water. Have you factored in? And while we're doing that house hunting exercise, those are the things that we should be looking into. Those are the things that we should be asking, you know, suburb by suburb as you're going around. Beforehand, while you're searching. Remember that there's those standard things that we look out for. Transportation, whether you're going to be using public transport or you have a vehicle of your own. How far are you from the freeway? How good is the public transportation system? Where are the schools? How is the security in that area and that kind of thing? But also ask about the water and lights bills. Maybe you come from a flat or you come from home. You didn't have that line item in your budget. Or it was lesser. Now you have this beautiful house that has X number of rooms, and obviously, to your point, the consumption is going to be larger. Maybe there's now a pool. You know, it's those things that we need to factor in. So yes, alongside the bond repayment, come now another line item, water and lights and levies and what have you. So it depends where you're coming from, where you were staying before, and what the payment restructure was there, and now look into what is going to be your responsibility going forward into now this new house that you've bought. So again, it's factoring in those things, that bond, furniture if you need to buy some furniture, but water and lights is a must. It's a line item that is there consistently. Have you factored it in? Are you going to afford that?
What about security, Eunice?
I come from maybe where I used to stay, I didn't have security issues, or it was all factored into the levy. Okay, and I had electric fence around the house where we were staying, or maybe it was a boomed area, or maybe I'm moving into a boom gate area where I was, we didn't have that. So there are items, those security items that are going to be factored in. Am I ready for those? Did I ask how much they are? Did I ask? Or I just fell in love with the house and I forgot to ask what comes with this house. You know, so it's also asking the questions, being awake. Yes, you're in love with the house, but just be awake. Just remember that there are much more important things that I need to ask that come as a package with this beautiful house that I'm falling in love with. So do ask. Your estate agent should actually talk you through all those fees, but also it's also your expectation, your responsibility to ask the questions. So yes, there could be some security additional costs that you need to factor in, and are you ready for those?
So all of this takes planning, all of this takes budgeting, and it also goes back to something you mentioned, which is research, obviously.
Yes.
If you do all of this research, might it obviously take a bit of a knock on your affordability assessment as well when it comes to the home, and you might have to reconsider the option that you first liked?
And we need that moment. We need that moment. Parallel to the excitement of house hunting, the excitement of finding this beautiful house that I like, go home and have a moment. Have a moment and say, can I just be sane now? And think of all the factors that I need to factor in. Do your research, like we say, read about that area, ask around, ask your agent to research for you or help you research, of all the other factors that you may forget or may not be aware of, that they're going to be, a line item in your budget. Look, you don't know what you don't know. So if I didn't know that there's X that is going to be charged once I move in, I wouldn't ask. So it's also maybe to some degree the responsibility of the agent, but I cannot blame the agent if he or she also forgot. True. I also need to probe and ask. Say, for instance, you're moving into a cluster kind of setup. What happens in a cluster if I come from a standalone house? I do not know.
Precisely.
Yes. So I must ask, what happens in a cluster situation? Then you'll have all of those unpacked for you.
Ask the questions and hopefully you hear no lies, but will be informed from an education perspective. Is it also a good idea to sit down with banks and financial institutions like the ones you represent and ask about the financial terms and conditions and even financial products that are available to make it easier for you to either save and budget for these additional costs that you might have to incur, or maybe even take a loan? Because I understand some people like to tweak and fix their homes when they move into it. That kitchen refurbishment that costs an arm and a leg compared to what you initially budgeted for.
I'm glad you asked about the products. Products are there, and we need to ask what is suitable for me. After we've had that discussion with the consultant in front of me to say, this is my situation, this is what I'm seeing I might need, but obviously in the conversation you'll be guided accordingly. To your point about the loan, we're now talking about a larger repayment, bond repayment, because it's a larger house. We're talking about electricity and water and lights that could go up. We spoke about security expectations that may become a new line item in my budget. We're now wanting to take it. We spoke about furniture.
Yes.
We now want to take out a loan to take care of those. I have a bond, and before this bond, I have had other responsibilities. My normal responsibilities given my personal situation. Maybe I buy groceries, I have children, the usual, my transportation to work. Now, if I take out a loan, it's an additional expense. It's an additional cost in my budget. Am I ready for that? Sit down. We're not saying it's wrong or right to take out a loan. Sit down and plan. It requires proper planning. Over and above the new loan, the home loan, the bond that I now have, am I ready to take out a loan, say for furniture? Am I ready to take out a loan to fix that kitchen or to do whatever else that I think? Am I ready to put in a new pool, a swimming pool, because I feel I have the space? Maybe this property didn't have a pool, but there's enough space for a pool, and I want my kids to have a pool, or I just want to have a swimming pool. There's nothing wrong with that, but am I ready for that expenditure? So it requires proper and thorough planning, and do not rush into things, because if you're rushing, you will overcome. You will overlook certain aspects. You will forget about other items that would come to you if you take your time, think about this exercise calmly, and also consult with the agent, consult with the financial institutions. Also ask maybe the seller of a few points. What happens in your area? How much have you been paying for water and lights? And obviously take into account their family setup. If there's a family of 4, husband and wife and 2 little kiddies, and maybe we are grown, we are more, so I have much bigger, older children, you know, it's not going to be the same. But just, it'll give you a guide. It'll give you a sense in terms of the costs. So have a conversation with them. Ask around, how is this? How is this? How is that? How did you find this? How have you been keeping up with this? How is the security? Ask those questions. Somebody said if in a complex that has, what was the example? That has electric fence, electric fencing. What are the implications? Yes, I'm excited now that I live in an electric fenced house or a gated community or a complex. Those things come at a cost. And we're not saying it's wrong. All we're saying is be aware of, plan, and be ready for them.
Precisely.
There's another cost that maybe we should also take into account: gardening service.
Yes, yes, because you require all these additional skills for a bigger property that you have, and obviously it won't come as cheaply as what you had before.
Yes, maybe. And maybe I come from a flat. I did not have a gardening cost in my budget, and now I have a home of my own that has enough space outside. I need gardening service.
We've said quite a bit, Eunice, but maybe it's time for us to get those key takeaway points. In summary, Eunice, the key notes to self that everyone needs to remember about tonight's conversation?
After the excitement of having your bond approved and the excitement of moving into a new house, just take a moment and calm down and think about the financial aspects, the financial implications that are going to be needed or that are going to, you know, take place in that exercise. One, we spoke about things like furniture. If you're moving into a bigger house that has bigger rooms or more rooms, you're going to require furniture. Do not pressurize yourself in terms of wanting to fill up the house when you're not ready for it. Another point was security. What security aspects do you need to install or have been installed that are going to require additional payments? Are you ready for that? Have you asked around? Have you considered them in your budget? Thirdly, we spoke about gardening. Is it going to be a new line item in your budget? Are you ready for it? And have you inquired what the setup is in that area? If it's a complex, they do have preferred suppliers. Do they charge per hour? Do you charge per, by meters, the size of your yard, that kind of thing. So ask and make sure that you're ready for that. And lastly is upgrading your security.
Yes.
What security measures do you need to put in place? How much are they going to cost? Some of them might be urgent that you need to do them now as you move in, and some are like, okay, I can do that much later. But all we're saying is do not be consumed by the excitement. Take time to sit down, have a meeting with yourself, plan, also ask around, get advice so that this exercise is not costly or you don't live to regret this good move that you've taken.
Research, planning, and having a meeting with yourself. I like that phrase. Well, that's where we have to leave it for Personal Finance this evening. A big thank you goes out to Eunice Sibiya, who's the head of FNB Consumer Education. Well, do be sure to keep in touch with us. You can send us your feedback on Twitter using the account at CNBC Africa, #Finance410, or at Gugulethu on my personal account on Twitter. Well, until next time, that's where we leave it for Personal Finance. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.